Hi everyone, welcome back to another CineDB Insights, which is an offspring of the CineDB Africa Conversation series, a series of in-depth encounters with film professionals from across the continent that was developed by a group of African curators as part of the CineDB.Africa project of the Goethe Institute, and is now accessible through the e-portal of Durban Filmmart Institute, the new home of CineDB.Africa. I am super, super happy today to welcome somebody finally from the continent of Africa, because it's been my job to interview the international experts, but I'm really happy because what would the documentary landscape on the continent of Africa be without Durban Film Mart? And I'm really happy to have Faiza Williams here from the team to talk about some of the networking, training, and funding opportunities that Durban Film Mart offers. Welcome, Faiza.
Thank you very much, Brigid. My name is Faiza Williams, and I am one of the project managers at the Durban filmmart. My main function is to basically coordinate the Pitch and Finance Forum, which happens at our annual market every year, where we bring in not only documentary filmmakers, but also fiction filmmakers, and more recently, animation filmmakers, which is a really fun part of the program. It's a good new addition because according to Forbes, Africa is the new place for animation.
Cool. So can you tell me more, like, what is, like, let's say when you're in the production phase of the film art, what is like a day in the life of like your work situation? What are you doing for Durban Film Mart? Tell us more about your job.
Okay, so apart from putting together the Pitch and Finance Forum for the annual event, I also work a lot on the year-round programming, which is very new and exciting at DFM. The first of our year-round programs that we've already started is called the Business Lab. So that's all to do with upskilling filmmakers for with production skills. So if you're a director, as a lot of filmmakers are, moving into the production space, the Business Lab sort of equips you to run your own business, but also gives you that confidence to sign legal contracts, or how should you go about negotiating distribution rights and those kind of things that emerging producers don't necessarily have those types of skills. Business Lab gives them that. So there's also that on top of planning for the annual film art. But I'll take you through a day. So normally at this time of the year especially, we're working through a lot of applications. So applications for the Pitch and Finance Forum are currently open. They generally open towards the start of December, and they close at the middle of February. So for the next 2 weeks, we're just going to be knee-deep in applications, making sure that each application is correctly packaged before we send it off to an external panel of readers, of course, from the filmmaking industry around the world, not just in Africa, so we can get lots of different perspectives, and they come up with the shortlist independently. We just facilitate that process. Apart from the applications, at the same time, I'm looking for decision makers who can come through, who are looking to collaborate with African filmmakers. So it's a lot of reading of different market catalogs, attending pitch sessions where I can, just to interact and engage with these decision makers, whether they're broadcasters, financiers, private equity funders, all those types of people, to try and convince them to come to Durban to meet African filmmakers, because we pride ourselves on being a great space to connect and network across the industry. So it's not only people from outside of the continent that will be here, but also people from within, because it's not very easy for Africans to travel within Africa yet. So a lot of the times, you might get two African filmmakers who meet each other for the first time in Durban, just because of the geographical and bureaucratic red tape we have to work with on the continent. So it's a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, a lot of research happens in this time.
Would you tell me maybe just a little bit about like the history of Durban Film Mart? Like, when did it start? What's it been doing? And what's it like today?
So Durban Film Mart started 14 years ago. It was a co-production of I'm going to call it a co-production just because it's a co-production market, but it was put together by the University of KwaZulu-Natal, which is the home of the Durban International Film Festival, and the city of Durban. So the Durban Film Office and the Durban International Film Festival put together the co-production market to run alongside the festival so that people could not only come and watch these amazing films, but also learn about the business of filmmaking, but also do the business that you have to, I would say, participate in order to get your film made. So that was then, and now we are no longer the baby of the industry in Durban. We are out on our own. We're now an NPO. We recently became an institute in 2020. So while the world was going through a big change, DFM also went through a big change. And by becoming an institute, we have more opportunity to do year-long programming and not just focus on a single event.
Super, super. So tell us about this year. What's happening? What are the festival dates? The market dates, and who do you expect to come?
Okay, so our market dates are from the 21st of July to the 24th of July. We will be running alongside the film festival again, as we traditionally do. Who are we expecting to come? We're expecting a lot of players in the African industry, as I mentioned earlier, but also players from the global film community, like our partners such as Hot Docs, Cinemat, IDFA, Saw Fund. I'm not going to name them all, but we've got like quite an extensive list of partners of international markets who we generally work with. So we try and make sure that we have a representative or two from each of those organizations. So if you come to the market and you aren't pitching in the formal setting, you still have an opportunity to meet those types of decision makers. I would say a big focus would be just solidifying that animation space that we opened last year for the Pitch and Finance Forum. Another big thing we'll be talking about is investments and like why people should invest in African film and, you know, just the whole financing landscape of it. A lot of DFM is also to do with celebrating. So we're going to celebrate African filmmakers who had success over the last 2 years, and it's going to be fun because we're back in person. So we're planning on a full-scale Durban Film Art where it's not just the industry program that's in person, but the pitches will also be back in person and the parties will be back in person, which are the parties are a very important aspect of any film market or film festival because that's a good space for networking. You know, so you've got to try to be intentional about your market experience. And I think by being intentional about your market experience, you will be successful in one way or another.
Yeah, I think like you hit the nail on the head. Like thinking about my experience at Durban Film Mart in 2019 before the pandemic, I partied really hard, but not in the sense of like partying really hard, like, and avoiding like work or something. I also took loads of meetings, but it's always so interesting to get to know people outside the framework of the individual meetings. So it is really important to offer these spaces that are more fluid for exchange of ideas, for exchange of thoughts about films, but also about life and about politics and values. So yeah, Durban is a great place to meet decision makers on a very like non-hierarchical level between like filmmaking talent and these so-called decision makers, which is a horrible term that we should banish from our vernacular. Like we should just call them like industry experts or something, or financiers, because like this idea that they, you know, hold the space between the decision making or not is like unfair. We can all make decisions.
I was having a conversation about the term decision makers the other day, and we thought maybe industry professionals could be a better term, but like that's open for discussion. So for now, we just use the term because it's easy for the global industry to understand.
Yeah.
I think that's why we're still using the term. But, you know, that's the thing. Durban Film Art's a place for conversation where we can talk about stuff like the language of the industry. And when we talk about language, it's not just about English or French, because we are open to people pitching in their own language. We recently started doing that because it's a lot easier to get your idea across sometimes without having to interpret it in your head before you talk to somebody.
Great. Can you tell me maybe like one or two of like your favorite films? I mean, favorite is so mean. That's such a mean question. One or two of films that you're really proud have gone through the Durban Film Mart pitching events.
So I'm gonna pick one from 2013. It was called Unearthed. It's a documentary about fracking in the Karoo. It stands out to me because they had like a really awesome sizzler reel. So for those of you who haven't been to the Karoo, it's just dry. It's like in the middle of South Africa. It's not really very populated because it's dry. There's like nothing happening there. And most of the water comes from boreholes, and by people fracking, they pollute those boreholes. So it was like quite a striking teaser to watch in 2013. And then later on, I think it was 2015 or 16 when they actually released the film, and was like, wow. So everything that they said that they're going to do in their pitch actually translated on the big screen. And people that they met at DFM, their logos were like all there in the credits. So that was like a wow moment, I would definitely say. And then there was other projects like Softy from Kenya by Sam Soko. When they pitched at DFM, we couldn't even call it Softy yet. They had to pitch under a different name just because of the political situation in Kenya. And that was quite cool that like they were brave enough to actually, you know, screen it under its correct name and everything. So that was quite cool. I'm getting emotional. There's so many. We have 10 every year, well, roughly 10 in each category every year, and you only get to see what happens after like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 2 or 3 years very loosely because there are other projects that took almost 10 years. So there was a film called Flatland that was at the first DFM. I think it was in 2009. And they only showed in 2019. They actually opened the Panorama in Brazil, like not Brazil, in Berlin. And it was like, wow, they took almost 12 years to make this. Like, do people still even remember when they heard the pitch in 2009? And it turns out people did. So
yeah,
so
I mean,
I like
this is an amazing thing. It's amazing, like, yeah, it sucks, especially with documentaries. It does really take sometimes 5 to 10 years to get them finished. But when you've been there at like the incubation stage, when it's just ideas bouncing around in filmmakers' minds, it's amazing to watch them go on like the complete journey and then for their films to be launched internationally. It's totally amazing. I also get super emotional about it. Okay, so now I have an important question from the filmmakers for you. So clearly you are very passionate about the projects that you support and you like love them a lot, like your children, which is like the best. How can filmmakers get the best on the radar of the DFMI? Where can they meet you? Or like, do you submit cold projects proposals? What's the best way to interact with Durban Film Mart?
I would say start with the website. It's quite easy to navigate. It's broken up into the annual event and your year-long programming. And as a filmmaker, you need to ask yourself, what do I want out of DFM? So if you want mentorship, we have that. So we've got a program called DFM Access that's specifically designed to create that access to market. If you don't know how to put together like a professional project package to apply for funding, to apply for pitch platforms, Access would be the program for you to start with. So as I said, ask yourself as a filmmaker, what do I want? If you want to pitch, all the details for how to enter the pitch are there, the types of people that you could meet through pitching, the types of prizes you could win. While it's not a competition, we do have a space where people can get prizes for pitching. So it's different types of prizes, whether it's a trip to Doc Leipzig to pitch at their market, or it's a cash prize from the National Film and Video Foundation, or just further industry consultation with an organization like the OIF. It's important for you as a filmmaker to ask yourself, what do I want to get out of this? As a filmmaker, you've got to be intentional for why you're coming to this market. What do you want to do? What are your goals at this market? If you're not sure of what you want to do, that's okay. Maybe you need to just come as a delegate, you know, and just see what happens. Like, you can watch the pitch session as a delegate. So you can know for next time, okay, I want to do that definitely. Or oh no, that's not for me. I'd rather do the speed meetings that we have on the side, which is something else you can sign up for, or you can sign up for something as simple as just coming to watch an industry talk with a filmmaker that, that you look up to, or even if it's a filmmaker that you don't know. Maybe you watched their film last night at the festival, and this morning they're talking about how they made it. That could help you as a filmmaker just lay out your goals of what you want to do. So those are ways you can engage with the film art. If you can't come to Durban, there are other ways to engage. You can always send us an email. A lot of our year-long programming is now done online, which is cool because you can still have your everyday life. So we just finished Business Lab, as I mentioned, and that took place from October to last week. So last week was what, the beginning of February? And the entire lab took place online. Or simply just send us a tweet like, hey, I have a project. Are you looking for applications yet? And somebody from our team will respond and say, yes, actually, the call for talents is open, or the call for Jumpstart. Jumpstart is a program that we developed together with our sister city, Nantes, in France. And it's run by the coordinator of the Festival of Three Continents from their market space called Prodiosuit, where they specifically work with directors. So you basically get free script consultation for like a period of 6 months, which is amazing because that's something that costs a lot of money generally, but you can get it for free if you apply, and that's what you want from it.
I think it's great advice. It's great advice if you have the opportunity to come just as a delegate on like some reconnaissance mission to understand what's going on. But the other piece of advice I would always give filmmakers is to ask your friends. Ask if you know someone who's already attended, to either pitch or be part of a delegation or go through one of like the labs, like what their experience was like, to see if it's also something for you.
If it's something for you and something for a project that you're developing at that time. I feel like timing is so important. Like last year we had a project pitch in the lab who had applied to Durban before. They'd applied maybe 3 or 4 times before, and they got declined. And it was mostly because they weren't that far along in development. And every time they applied, they told us something new. As much as we do send the applications to an external panel, we also keep notes of them. So we're able to tell the panel, look, this person applied 4 times, but the last time they applied, they didn't have a teaser, or they didn't have their research completed. So I think timing is also very important for how you wish to engage with the film art. So maybe this year it's more appropriate for you to come as a delegate, and next year it'll be more appropriate for you to participate in one of the programs. So you just have to weigh it up to see what works for you at a specific time in your career or in your project's life cycle.
Finally, I can ask somebody from the continent this very question I've been waiting to ask. This is my favorite one. Faiza, what do you think we could be doing to support African talent more?
Okay, so apart from money and mentorship, which are 2 very important things for us on the continent, something I would say is, in order to support us, try and be more open to understanding us. Like, Africa is a continent and not a country. We speak a bunch of languages. I think there's only like 5 listed as the main languages spoken in Africa, but those 5 languages are really just languages for business. Every region has their own indigenous languages, which are very important and very specific. And I think that when it comes to working with Africa, you need to be open because there's no such thing as an African aesthetic. And I feel like that's a term that we need to throw away when we're working with Africa, and just be open to learning about other people in other places. So that's one way you can support us, by just allowing us to be us from whichever part of the continent you are, and not having that expectation of upholding some kind of aesthetic that, people from the global north have in their head about Africa. So that's one important thing I would say. And also, please bear with us, like, especially when we have to travel outside of the continent. We have to apply for visas, and there's lots of other things that we have to do to come and participate in a lab. It's not as simple as taking a train from London to Paris, which is super easy. You know, we have to plan a lot further in advance if we're going to travel to international labs. I would say to people from that part of the world to just be considerate of how much more goes into planning a trip when it comes to African filmmakers. And yeah.
Thank you so much for taking some time out of your very busy day to talk with cinedb.africa about the Durban Film Mart.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope what I've said was informative. I know sometimes I can talk a bit fast, but if I did talk too fast and there's somebody watching who missed something, please feel free to get in touch. You can write to info@durbanfilmmart.com and there will be somebody to answer your question. If that's too difficult, like I said, you can send us a tweet, drop us a DM on Instagram or something, and somebody will definitely answer your question.
Super. Great. So we can link all of those to this interview. Thank you so much and have a beautiful day.
Thank you, Brigid.